check this out. This block here has a negative acceleration. Question, will this block speed up or will it slow down? Go ahead, think about it, have your answer. All right, let's lock it in. So, what is the answer? Well, let's find out. So, if I turn on our vectors here, we can see that we have a negative acceleration here of -2 meters per second squared with a velocity of positive 8 meters per second. So let's see what happens. So we can see it's started out moving fast and it in fact slowed down. Now, before you say I was right or I was wrong, well, let's try something a little different here. Now, let's take my velocity here and let's make it also negative, like so. And now let's see what happens. What's happening? It is actually speeding up now. So what's going on here? I didn't change the acceleration. The acceleration was -2 in both cases. But in this case, when the velocity was to the right, it was slowing down. But when the velocity started to the left here, it was speeding up. So why is that? Well, in order to understand this, we need to understand what does it mean for the acceleration to be negative. What that means is it simply means that the acceleration is in the negative direction. So if I define to the right as positive, then the left has to be negative. Okay? And in physics, we can really define either direction as positive or negative. Right doesn't have to be positive. We could have set right to be negative. But in this case, we're saying left is negative. All right, now, what does that tell you about how it affects the velocity? Well, having a negative acceleration just means that the velocity is going to change to the left. So what that looks like is basically that this vector, this velocity vector, gets smaller, changes to the left by getting smaller. And when a velocity vector changes to the left by getting smaller, well, that means that the speed, the magnitude of the velocity, gets smaller as well. In other words, it slows down. And we can see that in action here. Basically, every second that it's traveling, the velocity vector is going to get smaller by 2 meters per second because it is changing in the negative direction. On the other hand, if the velocity was to the left here as well, well then, how does the velocity vector change to the left? Well, it's got to grow and get larger. And we can see that when I hit play here. Right, that velocity vector grows and gets larger. And when that velocity vector grows and gets larger, that means that the speed is increasing. It's speeding up. And we can even see this. What do you think is going to happen if I was to run this for a bit here? Go ahead and predict what's going to happen to the object. Is it going to speed up or slow down? Well, let's see. So we can see that the velocity vector is getting smaller and therefore it is slowing down, but then eventually it's going to come to a stop for a moment when it reaches a velocity of 0. But the acceleration is still negative, meaning that the velocity is still going to be changing to the left. Which then, how does it do that? Well, it has to then start speeding back up in the opposite direction here. All right, so now we have a disk here that we are launching vertically at 20 meters per second with an acceleration of -9.8 meters per second squared. So go ahead and predict, what do you think is going to happen to the disk now? Is it going to speed up or is it going to slow down? Okay, let's find out. So we can see at first what's happening. It's slowing down. And then eventually it reaches some maximum height when that velocity reached 0 meters per second for an instant. But because that acceleration is still downwards, well, then it turns around and starts heading back down, speeding up. And if there's no floor, well, it's just going to keep on speeding up and speeding up forever and ever and ever. Okay. So what is the rule then? The rule is basically if the velocity and the acceleration are in the same direction, like so, they're both downwards, well then it speeds up. If on the other hand, the velocity and the acceleration are in opposite directions, well then it will slow down. And later on in your physics course, you may wonder, well, what if the velocity and the acceleration are perpendicular to each other? Then what happens? All right, everyone. Hope you all found that to be helpful and clarified a few things. Feel free to subscribe for more physics questions in the future, and I'll see you all on the next one. Bye bye.